Now, since we're talking about the Supreme Court, I do want to interject Ketanji Brown Jackson here. So for me, I am Black. I do have locks in my hair, and so does Ketanji Brown Jackson. And I know that for a lot of Black women, this was a moment of pride to see a Black woman on the Supreme Court and one who has locks, because locks are perceived as unprofessional, even though they're not. And so that was a huge win in terms of seeing someone who looks like a Black person in a position like the Supreme Court. And Ketanji Brown Jackson, in addition to kind of going viral with her whole explanation or non-answer for what a woman is, she has gone viral recently because I guess she made a statement in a court case, and basically she was arguing that Black people are disabled. Now, I am Black and I am actually disabled. I have a hearing loss, and so I can kind of understand and relate to what she's saying, but I think she missed the mark here. So we can actually play the clip and listen to Ketanji Brown Jackson in her own words.
Thinking of it, of the fact that remedial action, absent discriminatory intent, is really not a new idea in the civil rights laws. And my kind of paradigmatic example of this is something like the ADA. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the backdrop of a world that was generally not accessible to people with disabilities. And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant.
I want to pause it here so I can understand what she's saying. People with disabilities, they do not have access to certain buildings, certain environments because of the nature of their disability, and we need to fix that. So she's arguing that Black people do not have access to certain spaces, specifically the voting booth. And so I think you can kind of understand what she's saying, but towards the end, it's not going to make sense, and we can let that play out.
The facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible. I guess I don't understand why that's not what's happening here. The idea in Section 2 is that we are responding to current day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system. Right? They're disabled. In fact, we use the word disable in Milligan. We say that's a way in which you see that these processes are not equally open.
Okay, so I don't think that this was a good comparison because Black people are not disabled. Like, the fact that you are Black does not make you disabled. You're not mentally disabled if you're Black, and you're not physically disabled just because you are Black. Now, you can be Black and have a disability, but your disability is not tied to the fact that you're Black. However, I can agree with what she was trying to say in the broad sense of Black people not having access to certain spaces. I can agree with what she was trying to argue there, but I don't think that argument makes sense because in 2025, Black people have access to the same spaces that other people have access to. And so, to give an example, I have a hearing loss. I want to go to the movies. I can physically get myself to the movie theater. I can sit down. I can watch the movie. I can hear what's being said, but I probably won't understand 50% of it. So in that sense, the movie theater is not accessible to me. So what they would do is create captioning devices, and I had to use one, and there's a video further back on my channel where I'm basically talking about that, and it was embarrassing because it's like this robotic looking thing that you put in your cup holder, and people were staring at me, didn't know what it was, and it was my first time using it, whatever, right? And so that makes the movie theater accessible to me. I can physically get there, I can watch the movie, I can read the machine. That makes everything a little bit better. Now, I've never used that machine again after that, but the point being is that that makes the movie more accessible to me. The movie that was the most accessible to me without me having to use something external was the movie Creed 3, which was subtitled because the daughter Donnie's daughter in Creed is deaf. She uses sign language. And so that made sense for them to have subtitles. And I know people don't like subtitles because it ruins how the video looks, whatever, right? And so anyway, there's not a similar comparison that you can give for Black people when it comes to voting. So I voted in New York City and also North Carolina. In North Carolina, there were 2 voting places near me. It was very easy to get to them. There were no lines, all of that stuff, right? And I didn't have to take that much time off from work. In New York City, I lived in the Bronx, and there was one place in my neighborhood. It was an old clothing store that was converted into the voting center for maybe the 2020 election. I'm not 100% sure. And the line was around the block. So people were waiting in line for probably about 3 to 4 hours, if not longer, just to be able to vote. And that is a long time to take off of work. That is a long time to be standing in line. And New York is crazy because there's not public bathrooms everywhere. Like usually you have to buy something. You can't just walk in to use the bathroom basically, right? And so that's what I always hated about New York. That situation I described is not unique to Black people. Everybody who lives in the Bronx in my neighborhood would have experienced that issue. There were white people there were Black people, there were Indian people, there were Muslim people, other people were there besides Black people, right? And so we were all dealing with the same issue. So in that sense, it's not fair to say, hey, Black people have to wait in line because there's only one center here and blah, 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 right? It impacts so many more people. I don't know if in a non-urban city environment, so like a small city that's predominantly Black or minority, I don't know if there's only one voting center for the whole city and you just have to figure it out, or if it's multiple voting centers and then you just deal with whatever comes, and then that's the case for everyone, right? And so I just don't see what she's arguing here being a valid argument, because the situations that she's describing, in my opinion, they're not race-based, because everyone needs a driver's license. Most people, if you don't live within walking distance, you need a car, so you shouldn't live somewhere where you need a car but you don't have one. And in certain situations, you can't control that, whatever, but that's not what we're speaking about. And then also, I just don't see anything here that is really limiting Black people and preventing them from being able to vote. Now, if you have financial situations and you just don't have the money to renew your driver's license or whatever, right, I can see why that would be a problem, but that's not unique to you being Black. That's just unique to you having money problems, and everyone has money problems at some point. And so, long story short, I don't necessarily agree with the comparison to saying that Black people are disabled, because they're not. Black people are not mentally or physically disabled just because they are Black.